I found the bank statement by accident. $500,000. Hidden in offshore accounts I never knew existed. But I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I waited. For months I played the perfect wife, warm smiles, small kindnesses, while I put together proof that would destroy him. This is how it began. It was a Tuesday morning, March 15, 2023. I remember the date because I pinned it to my chest like a wound I wanted to study. Small details matter when you're building a case. Times, receipts, messages, they become the scaffolding of truth. The mailbox had a small stack of envelopes. Most were bills, junk, things I tossed into a pile I meant to sort later. His briefcase sat on the kitchen island, left open. He had left early for what he called a client dinner the night before. He kissed me on the forehead and told me to lock up. I'd thought nothing of it. I reached for a piece of junk mail and a thin white envelope slid out from between the pages. A bank letter. I almost put it back without opening it. Something made me slip my thumb under the seal. The paper inside was ordinary, a bank statement with a logo I didn't recognize. My heart moved slow, then fast, then stopped. There it was. A line item. A balance. $500,000. $500,000 parked in an account with a foreign-sounding name, one I'd never heard him mention. I read it again like a spell. I read it a third time and my hands started to shake. That he'd been lying for years, not just a small lie. A pattern. A parallel life of precision and privacy. Every business trip he took for networking. Every conference dinner, he said, was with clients. Every time he told me money was tight when the bills arrived late. It was all staged. For what? To hide money from me. To keep options. To build a secret safety net for whoever came next. I sat down at the kitchen table and I did the thing I always do when my emotions are a live wire. I breathed, I counted, and I let the shock settle into focus. The first rule of any careful plan is to not act at the wrong time. I did not call him. I did not confront him. I folded the statement back into the envelope, set it inside a drawer, and walked to the sink as if nothing had happened. I kissed him goodbye when he left for work later, placed a coffee mug in front of him, and told him about the meeting I planned that night. His smile was easy. He had no clue that his whole life had a hairline crack running through it, and that crack was about to widen. The next step was to find out how much of the truth this one paper represented. $500,000 could be a single payment, a false label, a mistake. Or it could be the tip of a calculated iceberg. I hired a forensic accountant. I didn't pick someone flashy. I picked someone discreet, known to close cases without drama. We met once, then twice. I slipped him documents under envelope and left him to work in the small hours. He called me once with phrases that felt like punches: multiple accounts, Cayman, Panama, Swiss. He used quiet language. But behind every syllable I heard the sound of things cracking. Every business trip matched a withdrawal. Every consulting dinner matched a transfer. He'd used shell companies, fake invoices, and layers of banks in places designed to hide the trail. It was meticulous. He had planned for detection. That meant he was afraid of exposure, or very greedy. Either way, he was vulnerable if I was patient. There's a strange intimacy that develops when you study someone's hidden life. You learn their habits by following the financial fingerprints. The timing tells you where they were and who they saw. The recipients tell you who benefited. You start to piece together evenings and faces that never existed for you, but that explained their absence from your life. I learned that his offshore accounts were not an impulsive hiding place. They were mapped out, optimized, and updated. Money would move, transfers to a Manchester LLC, then to a Panama trust, then into a Swiss account under a name that was a shell even to the shell. It was the work of a man who wanted distance from consequence, but I also found a pattern in his arrogance. He thought his plan clever enough to be permanent. He thought he'd covered every door. He had not counted on someone he had wronged becoming quietly obsessed with proof. My life didn't change outwardly. I continued to be the wife who packed lunches and asked about his day. I kept the calendar of birthdays and the small rituals that give a marriage its rhythm. I never showed my anger. I didn't raise my voice. I answered his "I love you" with a practiced warmth that tasted like iron. Every touch from him felt like a test. Every smile had an edge. I learned to smile as though nothing inside me had been rearranged. People assume silence means weakness. It doesn't. Silence is a room you step into when you need everything to be contained. When you speak without all your pieces in place, you lose. When you speak with evidence, you win. I built a secret folder on a flash drive I hid inside a hollowed book on the top shelf of my study. The book was a fake, a prop for guests. Inside were downloaded bank statements, travel logs, email prints, screenshots of suspicious transfers, scanned receipts, my accountant's notes, and a small list of potential witnesses. I organized it like a jury file because that's what it would be one day, proof for a judge and a jury. I labeled every file carefully and backed it up to a safety deposit box. Collecting evidence became an obsession in the cleanest possible sense, methodical, precise, non-panicky. I tracked transfers down to the minute, matching them to his client hours using calendar invites on his shared work account. I set my phone to alert when he used certain routes or when his location pinged outside routine. Not because I wanted to humiliate him in private. Because real ruin requires proof. You can bring into a courtroom. Then I found something even worse. I discovered an account that was not just offshore but shared, with another name. Another person who benefited. There were transfers from his accounts into a third person's name, not an investment, not a vendor. A pattern of domestic transfers that pointed to someone closer than a business partner. The pattern fit the cadence of weekend flights, late-night dinners, hotel bookings. The man I'd trusted for 15 years was not only hiding money, he was hiding a second life. The power of this discovery was not that it would make him hurt. The power was that it changed the stakes. This was not just financial deceit. This was betrayal with hands and names. It meant the story could not be fixed with a private apology, a quiet shuffle of assets, a promise. It was explosive. I continued to act like nothing was wrong. I greeted him at the door with a warm smile. I arranged his meetings, ironed his shirts, and asked him about his clients, with curiosity instead of accusation. He told me little lies that seemed harmless. Conference in Geneva, he said once. A long weekend in Miami for networking, he said another time. I stored them like little tombstones, dates I could cross-reference later. When the time came, I hired the best divorce attorney in the state. Not the flashy one, but the one with a reputation for leaving no stone unturned. The lawyer listened to the summary, then said the thing I already knew: we can press for distribution. We can petition for hidden assets. And in this jurisdiction, financial infidelity is considered in division. The sentence was a map. It told me that the law could be my instrument if I had the instruments to play it. He taught me the practical moves we would need. We worked quietly and strategically. We created a legal firewall. We put joint funds into armored accounts that required 2 signatures. He set protective liens on property and advised me to change beneficiaries where possible, actions that would look routine to anyone watching but were critical locks. Meanwhile, I learned the art of invisibility. I was careful with receipts, with emails, with payments. I started using cash for small purchases to keep no trace of day-to-day spending he could claim. I did not remove anything from our shared devices. Evidence must appear to be natural when you produce it. But I did create safe copies in places a court would accept. I also secured the little things that ruin men faster than money, reputation and access. I quietly sent certified letters to the bank managers, telling them to expect further correspondence and explaining nothing. I changed locks on accounts that we controlled together. I did these steps with such quiet that if he glanced at them, they looked like administrative updates. He didn't see the web tightening. The psychological game is delicate. He continued to act like his secret was a security blanket. Every time he bragged about a smart investment or waved away a question about finances, I felt the web taut another inch. The worst mistake a liar makes is to assume the silence will go on forever. There is a particular kind of power that comes when the person who wronged you thinks they're still conquering. It gives you space to move. He walked the world puffed up. He made careless phone calls. He left documents on planes and at restaurants. He used his office computer to log into offshore pages he assumed were safe. He told his lover things that could later be traced. I cataloged each careless moment like evidence. The weeks turned into months. I let him keep his arrogance. I let him cook his own lies. I went to breakfast with friends who asked about my quiet marriage, and I smiled. For anyone who watched, everything looked normal. For anyone who listened closely, the sound was the tap of a keyboard downloading a ledger. At some point, his pattern became a poem I could recite. There was a set of dates he'd follow before a transfer, a lunch with a partner, an expense claim that inflated a business trip, a small cash withdrawal at an ATM near a boutique hotel. The rhythm became predictable. Predictability is a weakness for a man who thinks he is cunning. Then the divorce attorney recommended a strategic legal move: get control of a joint asset that would force him into a legal response. We did it. We transferred certain joint funds into a protected account, under lawyer supervision. Legally, it was within our rights. Practically, it was a chess move. He reacted with thin anger, asking if I had gone behind his back. I said nothing. Silence is a mirror, let the liar see himself screaming. We filed the necessary papers with the state registry in ways that were invisible to a casual observer. We did everything with respect to the law. The law loves methodical work. It responds to procedure. It was my ally now. A man like him begins to smell a threat when the tide changes. For a week he was careful. For a week he stopped leaving documents in the open, stopped making rash transactions. He started to worry, at last. His calls increased. He began to check our accounts more often. And in those checks, he made two critical errors. The first error was panic. Greed dressed as fear makes men sloppy. He made a large withdrawal, a move to move money faster than his paperwork could prove. It triggered alerts. The second error was hubris. He used his lover's account as a relay and innocently mentioned the account name in a voicemail he never meant me to hear, thinking it private. Voicemails can be saved. They can be subpoenaed. In the wrong hands, they are confessions. I played my final moves with surgical calm. I had the attorney prepare divorce papers and an asset disclosure package. I had the forensic accountant prepare an easy-to-digest file for the court: timelines, wire trails, copies of registrations for shell companies, and screenshots of his careless messages. The documents were bulletproof. The plan was not to humiliate with drama but to let the law do what it does: strip lies into evidence. The dinner I chose for the reveal was ordinary. I wanted normal. We ate his favorite, roasted salmon with a herb crust. I set a candle between us. The quieter the scene, the louder the blow. When the plate was cleared and the wine had settled, I slid the divorce papers across the table like a coaster. He looked at the paper, puzzled. Then he read. Confusion. Then denial. His face went a dozen shades in a single breath. He reached for me, voice begging, "Please, we can work this out. We can fix this." I let him speak. Let men speak when they have to fill a silence. Their words sink them. He said it was for us that the offshore accounts were an investment he orchestrated to protect us from bad markets. He used familiar tones, the same language he'd used for 15 years to spin reason into control. I read one line of his own words back to him, printed from his voicemail. "Transfer to Anna's account now," it said, his voice casual and clear. "Make sure the funds are clean." He swallowed. That was the moment he realized his voice had betrayed him. We went to court. The files we had built were submitted in order. The forensic accountant testified. Bank officials confirmed wire holds. The judge read them slowly, like he was reading the end of a man's story. The judge did what judges do when confronted with undeniable fact. He applied the law. The result was not instantaneous theatrical collapse. Justice moves with procedure, not fireworks. But when the court order came, it was a clean, precise guillotine for his financial plans. He was liable for penalties. The offshore accounts were flagged for seizure, and the transfers were traced back to him. The IRS opened inquiries. The bank froze assets. His company faced audits. In the end, the law did what my silence could not. It took away the child he had hidden, the nest he had built, the secret options that kept him safe. He lost more than money. He lost reputation. He lost the freedom that arrogance pretends is untouchable. He begged, he threatened, he tried to bargain. None of it mattered. The facts were the facts. In the months that followed, he tried to rebuild his life with the same energy he had used to hide from me. He had to answer to auditors, to broken partners, to a bank that would no longer trust him. It was a slow crumble. He sold a car, then another asset, until the comfortable facade he had lived in was gone and he was left with the rawness of consequence. As for me, the file I had made for myself in the court returned a result that looked like justice. The settlement restored what should never have been hidden. I walked away with the majority of assets. I walked away with the truth in my pocket. I walked away intact, not because I was without pain, but because I had been patient. You learn a lot when you can watch a man destroy himself with the weapons he forged. I learned that silence saves energy, that methodical action is merciless. And that truth, when assembled piece by piece, is louder than any confession. If you ever find yourself holding a secret and you feel the earthquake of betrayal beneath your feet, document. Be measured. Let the law be precise for you. And be patient. Wait until the proof is there. Timing is everything. What I told no one that night at dinner, the very moment I slid that paper across the table, was, I am finished playing the role of the woman who didn't see. He expected a fight. He didn't expect the quiet unmaking. He ended up with empty accounts and a story where his name was the example. I ended up with control, peace, and the small, quiet dignity of someone who refuses to be erased. If my story gives you one lesson, let it be this: anger wants to explode. Justice wants to be precise. If you can be both patient and exact, your victory will be irreversible. When the courtroom doors closed that day, the world didn't explode. There were no cameras. No public scene. Just the sound of a gavel, a paper signed, and a man realizing everything he built was no longer his. The irony of betrayal is that when it collapses quietly. It's not thunder, it's dust settling after the explosion. You watch it drift through the air and realize you've been breathing it for years. After court, I walked out into a gray afternoon. He stood a few feet away, speaking to his lawyer. I saw his hands, shaking, restless, searching for something to grip. He looked smaller. Men who build their identity on control never look the same once it's taken from them. I didn't feel joy. Not yet. Revenge isn't about joy. It's about justice landing exactly where it belongs. Within weeks, word started to spread. His company, the one he built from borrowed trust and other people's money, began to unravel. The audit became an investigation. The IRS had frozen his offshore accounts pending review. The partners withdrew. Clients pulled contracts. Investors wanted out. He had spent years building an empire made of paper walls, and I had simply shown everyone where to look. One afternoon, my lawyer called. You might want to see this, he said. He sent me an article from a small financial blog. Headline: Local entrepreneur under investigation for hidden assets. There was no mention of me, no mention of divorce, just him, stripped of the image he'd curated. It was a small article, but it spread like wildfire. In his world, reputation was currency. And that currency was gone. At night, I'd sit by the window with tea and silence. The house felt different, lighter somehow. For years, every wall had held a secret. Now, the walls just held quiet. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just peace, no explanations, no justifications, no pretending. 2 weeks later, he showed up unannounced. The gate camera pinged his car before I even opened the door. I should have ignored it. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I stepped outside. He stood there, rain dripping off his coat, holding a file. His eyes looked desperate, not angry, just lost. Can we talk? He said softly. I crossed my arms. About what? The past or the present? He hesitated. About fixing this. I almost laughed. Fixing this? You didn't fix the lies. You built them. He took a step closer, voice shaking. I was scared, okay? Scared of losing control. Of not having enough. I thought I was protecting us. The word us hit me like a ghost. There hasn't been an us in years, I said quietly. He tried to hand me the file. These are papers, proof the accounts are being closed. Maybe we can start over. Please, I don't want to lose you. I looked at the file but didn't take it. Start over? I said. You buried our life under lies, and now you want to rebuild on the same ground? No. I've already started over. You're still standing in the ashes. He looked down, shoulders shaking. I lost everything, he whispered. I tilted my head. No, I said softly. You threw it away. And then I closed the door. That was the last time I saw him in person. The legal process moved slowly, but steadily. The forensic accountant worked hand in hand with the government auditors. More accounts surfaced. The total hidden amount wasn't just $500,000. It was closer to $1.30 million. Every discovery widened the hole beneath his feet. Each hidden transfer became a nail in the coffin of his credibility. He tried to claim business loss. He tried to blame clerical errors. But paper doesn't lie. And silence, when backed by evidence, becomes deafening. The court ordered full asset redistribution. I received 60% of all verified holdings, including half of what was recovered offshore. His lawyer tried to argue, but my evidence file was airtight. He was left with penalties, debts, and a public record that would shadow him for decades. The man who once told me I wouldn't understand business now had his entire business dismantled by the woman he underestimated. When the settlement finalized, I made a decision that surprised even me. I kept the house, not out of nostalgia, not for sentiment. I kept it because it was mine now, not as a symbol of the life we shared, but as proof that I could take what was meant to destroy me and make it mine. The first night I slept alone in that house, it rained hard. The kind of rain that sounds like erasing. I walked through every room, barefoot, touching the walls, thinking of all the times I had stood here pretending to be happy. Every step was a reclaiming. I replaced his office with a small studio, painted it white, added bookshelves, and sunlight. The hollow book where I'd hidden the flash drive now sat on display. Not as a secret anymore, but as a reminder. Inside it, I kept one note: never let silence be fear. Let it be preparation. A month later, a letter came, handwritten, unmarked envelope. I knew the handwriting immediately. He wrote, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I can't sleep. I can't think. I lost everything. But losing you was the worst." I read it once. Then I folded it neatly, placed it in the drawer where that first bank statement had been, and closed it. Because some stories don't need replies. They just need endings. Freedom, when you've been trapped in deceit, feels awkward at first. You don't know what to do with your time when it isn't spent second-guessing. You don't know how to spend your mornings when your life isn't built around someone else's lies. I started to rebuild in small, unglamorous ways. I took courses I'd once delayed. I started consulting work in financial planning. Ironic, I know. But I'd learned enough about money and deception to help others avoid what I lived through. Every client who sat across from me, every woman who whispered, "I think something's off, but I can't prove it." I saw myself in them. And I taught them what no one had taught me: documentation is power. Calm is strategy. Silence can be your sharpest weapon. Within a year, I had my own firm. A small team. A quiet office with glass walls and white orchids. Peace doesn't look loud. It looks like control. Then, one morning, I saw him again. Not in person, on television. A financial news segment was covering tax fraud cases. His name was there, in the scrolling ticker. Charges: tax evasion. Failure to disclose foreign assets. Wire fraud investigation pending. I didn't smile. I just turned off the TV. The world had finally caught up to him. What started as my discovery had become his collapse, public, permanent, and deserved, and that's when I felt it for the first time: real peace. Not vengeance. Not satisfaction. Just stillness, because justice isn't noise. It's silence after the storm. It's when you realize you don't need to destroy someone, the truth will do it for you. Today, I live differently. No hidden accounts. No secrets behind passwords or codes. Just transparency, with myself, with my work, with anyone I let close. I travel. I donate. I teach women how to identify financial manipulation before it turns into prison bars of paper. And every time I see a woman's face light up with understanding, I think, this is wealth. Not the kind that hides offshore, but the kind that never needs to be hidden. Sometimes at night, I walk through my garden, the same one he never had time to tend. I planted olive trees there, slow-growing but steady. They take years to mature, but when they do, they last lifetimes. Patience, persistence, and peace, the three things that built my revenge. A few months ago, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Is this Mrs. Hale?" The voice asked. "Yes," I said cautiously. "This is Detective Morales with Financial Crimes. We're finalizing closure on your ex-husband's case. We wanted to confirm your cooperation was complete." My chest tightened slightly. "It is," I said. "It's been complete for a long time." He paused. "I just wanted to tell you, you did the right thing. Most people don't come forward. They panic. You built a perfect case. I smiled faintly. No, I said. I just learned to stop doubting myself. He chuckled softly. Well, it worked. He's taking a plea deal. Good, I said. It's over. And it was. Completely. People ask me now if I ever regret it, the silence, the patience, the years of pretending. The answer is no. Because every calm choice I made was a brick in the foundation of my freedom. Every quiet night I endured was a preparation for the day the truth spoke louder than I ever could. You don't always need to fight to win. Sometimes you just need to wait long enough for your enemy to destroy themselves, and have the courage to be ready when they do. If you ever discover betrayal, financial, emotional, or otherwise, remember this: don't react. Record, don't confront. Prepare, don't explode. Execute, the world rewards precision. Not panic. When you strike, do it with calm. Because calm isn't weakness, it's focus. And focus wins wars. He thought I was just a wife who wouldn't understand numbers. He forgot I was a woman who could count lies, days, and dollars. He thought silence meant surrender. He didn't realize silence was strategy. And when the time came, silence became the sound of his downfall. When everything finally ended, I didn't feel the victory people imagine. I felt weight. Heavy and quiet. Like the silence after you put down something you've been carrying for too long. The lawyer called to confirm that the case was closed, and the funds were transferred. The government had finished their audit. He'd accepted a plea deal, restitution, community service, and a permanent stain on his record. For the first time in years, I didn't know anyone and answer. I walked through the house that afternoon. The sun was coming in through the windows, catching the dust in the air, turning it into gold. It was strange to see light where there used to be shadows. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on the kitchen counter, the same counter where he used to plan his business trips. There was no anger anymore. Just space. I realized then that peace doesn't roar, it whispers. Days turned into weeks. I started to live again, but it felt like learning how to breathe after years underwater. I signed up for a workshop on small business finance. I wanted to understand the system better, not because of what he did, but because I refused to be naive again. Knowledge was no longer just power, it was protection. I met women there who carried the same bruises I once did, only theirs weren't visible. They told me stories about lost savings, hidden debts, manipulation that left them scared and confused. I listened, and for the first time, I wasn't just hearing pain, I was hearing purpose. That's how my next chapter began. I started a quiet online community, just a small one at first, for women who'd been financially betrayed. I called it The Ledger. A place where we didn't talk about revenge. We talked about recovery. About how to rebuild without shame. How to be silent without being powerless. It grew faster than I expected. Every week, there were new faces, new names, new stories. I realized how many of us had been trained to doubt our instincts, to think silence meant submission. I wanted to change that. Sometimes, late at night, I'd still think about him. Not with hatred, but with clarity. I could almost see him, sitting in that empty apartment downtown, the one the court left him after everything else was taken. The curtains probably half drawn, his phone buzzing with calls he didn't answer. He had built his life on control, and when control left, he had nothing else. That's the thing about people like him, they mistake fear for respect. And when the fear disappears, they crumble. I remember one evening, I got an email. No name, no signature, just a line that read, "You were right. I'm sorry." I deleted it without replying. Not out of cruelty, but because some conversations end best in silence. Forgiveness isn't about reopening the door, it's about realizing you don't have to stand in it anymore. Life moved forward in small, graceful ways. I sold the second car, downsized, traveled. I spent 3 weeks in Italy, walking along narrow streets lined with olive trees. I laughed more than I had in years. I didn't think about money, or deceit, or what was taken. I just existed. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. When I came home, I found an envelope waiting. Inside was a single document, confirmation that every seized offshore account had been closed permanently. No numbers, no drama, just finality. I put it away in a drawer next to my passport and smiled. That was the last piece of him left in my life, and now it was over. Months later, I was invited to speak at a financial ethics seminar. Standing at that podium, looking out at faces eager to learn, I realized something profound. Revenge had never been my goal. It had just been the bridge that led me to freedom. What I wanted wasn't to destroy him. I wanted to reclaim myself. And I had. When the lights dimmed that evening, I stood alone in the empty hall for a moment. The echo of my own voice lingered. I thought back to that first day, the letter, the trembling hands, the fear that I might never recover. And then I thought of now, steady breath, unshaken calm, a life rebuilt from truth. People think justice is loud. That it comes with headlines or applause. But real justice is quiet. It's the sound of someone sleeping peacefully after years of pretending. It's opening your own bank statement and knowing every number is honest. It's walking away without needing the world to see what you've won. If I could speak to the version of me who first found that hidden account, I'd tell her this: stay calm. Don't waste your energy on rage. Use it to build your exit. Every lie they tell you becomes a map leading to their downfall. And when they think you're still lost, that's when you'll already be free. Now, every morning, I wake up before sunrise. I make coffee, open the windows, and let the air in. The world feels different when you live in truth. There's no fear of discovery, no need to hide. Just space, clean, open, and yours. Sometimes, people ask me if I'd ever trust again. The answer is yes. But not blindly. Trust, like wealth, has to be earned, monitored, and protected. And if I ever feel that instinct again, that tiny pull in my gut that something isn't right, I'll listen. Silence taught me that much. In the end, he lost everything that mattered to him: money, reputation, control. And I gained everything that mattered to me: peace, independence, clarity. That's the real difference between us. He hid his fortune in foreign accounts. I found mine in forgiveness. So, if you're watching this and someone's lied to you, about money, about love, about who they are, don't rush to expose them. Let time do the talking. Collect your facts. Protect your sanity. The truth has a way of surfacing at exactly the right moment. He thought my silence was weakness. He never realized it was the sound of his empire cracking. And when it finally crumbled, I didn't have to lift a single stone. I just walked away and let gravity finish what he started, because the best revenge isn't taking back what they stole. It's building something they can never touch: your peace.